Hi, it's good to see you again here in the book corner. We're in the process of reading about Prince Caspian, and last time we found out that Dr. Cornelius, his new tutor, was a pretty good guy after all. And one night he took Prince Caspian through the castle and way in the back and up various stairs and way up to the top of a tower to show him some stars. But really, he had taken him up there so that they could be private and talk about some things that he didn't want other people to know, because he wanted him to know that his nurse had been sent away because she was telling Prince Caspian about the old Narnians, about the dwarves and the talking animals and the ancient kings and so on. And these kings don't like him. And so he wanted to tell him about that. And then he also wanted to tell him some history about how these people came to be as they were. That Prince Caspian was a Telmarine, and that his family, a long time ago, several generations back, had come in and had conquered the old Narnians. And the old Narnians had disappeared and gone into hiding, and the Telmarines were now in charge of things. And Prince Caspian says, "Oh, I wish we hadn't, and I am glad it was all true, even if it is all over. Many of your race wish that in secret," said Dr. Cornelius. In other words, that there were still old Narnians around. "But doctor," said Caspian, "why do you say my race? After all, I suppose you're a Telmarine too." "Oh, am I?" said the doctor. "Well, you're a man anyway," said Caspian. "Am I?" repeated the doctor in a deeper voice, and at the same moment throwing back his hood so that Caspian could see his face clearly in the moonlight. All at once Caspian realized the truth and felt that he ought to have realized it long before. Dr. Cornelius was so small and so fat, and had such a very long beard. Two thoughts came into his head at the same moment. One was a thought of terror. "He's not a real man, not a man at all. He's a dwarf. And he's brought me up here to kill me." The other was sheer delight. "There are real dwarves still, and I've seen one at last." "So you've guessed it in the end," said Dr. Cornelius, "or guessed it nearly right. I'm not a pure dwarf. I have human blood in me too. In the great battles, many dwarves escaped in the great battles and lived on, shaving their beards and wearing high-heeled shoes and pretending to be men. They have mixed with your Telmarines. I am one of those, only a half-dwarf, and if any of my kindred, the true dwarves, are still alive anywhere in the world, doubtless they would despise me and call me a traitor. But never in all these years have we forgotten our own people and all the other happy creatures of Narnia and the long-lost days of freedom." I'm sorry, doctor," said Caspian. "It wasn't my fault, you know." And it's true. Prince Caspian never defeated the old Narnians. It wasn't my fault. Uh, I am not saying these things to blame you individually. I'm not blaming you, Prince Caspian, um, answered the doctor. "You may well ask why I say them at all. Why don't we just forget about that? That's terrible, that old story. We don't need to hear that stuff. You may well ask why I say them at all, but I have two reasons. Firstly, because my old heart has carried these secret memories so long that it aches with them and would burst if I did not whisper them to you. But secondly, for this, that when you become king, you may help us, for I know that you also, Telmarine though that you are, love the old things." So why is Dr. Cornelius telling um, Prince Caspian about these old days and how his family and the Telmarines had wiped out or nearly nearly got rid of all the old Narnians. Why is he doing that? Well, number one, because it's on his heart and he needs to tell somebody. And number two, because he thinks Prince Caspian might be able to help him. Now, this is something that we need to think about today. I live here in the United States, but as you can see, I'm a white man. My family came from Europe, and there were several background families. I'm Irish, I'm English, I'm Scottish, I'm a bit Swedish. I already said Swedish, Swiss, and a bit German. In other words, when my family way back moved over here and they intermarried, um, they kind of all mixed together. And so I'm a European with all these different kinds of European bloodlines in me. And when we came here, I don't know of anybody in my family who fought Indians or Native Americans and killed any. But I do know that some of my family settled out where the Indians or the Native Americans lived and took over land that had belonged to the Indians. And I also don't know of anybody in my family who ever owned a slave, a black person who was brought from Africa to be a slave. So I could say, well, I didn't do that. I didn't kill any Indians. I didn't. I don't own any slaves and never have. But that isn't the point. The point is that we prosper today, just like Prince Caspian, at the expense of others who lost things. The Native Americans lost their land and their way of life, and many black people lost their freedom. And so we prosper today because of that. And if we have a heart of love in us and we look at some of the conditions that those people live in because they have been so disadvantaged, we might want to try to figure out ways to do justice, to do things that will help make things right. And that's what Dr. Cornelius is saying to Prince Caspian. Uh, he says, I know that you love the old things. I do, said Prince Caspian, but how can I help? Well, you can be kind to the poor remnants of the dwarf people like myself. You can gather learned magicians and try to find a way of awaking the trees once more. You can search through all the nooks and wild places of the land to see if any fauns or talking beasts or dwarfs or are perhaps still living in hiding. Do you think there are any? Asked Prince Caspian eagerly. Oh, I don't know, said the doctor with a deep sigh. Sometimes I am afraid there can't be. I have been looking for traces of them all my life. Sometimes I have thought I heard a dwarf drum in the mountains. Sometimes at night in the woods, I thought I caught a glimpse of fauns or satyrs dancing in a long way off, but when I came to the place, there was never anything there. I have often despaired, but something always happens to start me hoping again. I don't know, but at least you can try to be a king like the high King Peter of old, and not like your uncle. Then it's true about the kings and the queens too, and about the White Witch, said Caspian. Certainly it is true, said Cornelius. Their reign was the golden age in Narnia, and the land has never forgotten them. Did they live in this castle, doctor? No, nay, my dear, said this old man. Said the old man, this castle is a thing of yesterday. Your great-great-grandfather built it, but when the two sons of Adam and the two daughters of Eve were made kings and queens of Narnia by Aslan himself, they lived in the castle of Cair Paravel. No man alive has seen that blessed place, and perhaps even the ruins of it have by now vanished. But we believe it was far from here, down at the mouth of the great river, on the very shore of the sea. Ugh, said Caspian with a shudder. Do you mean in the black woods where all the ghosts live? Your Highness speaks as you've been taught, said the doctor, but it is all lies. There are no ghosts there. That is a story invented by the Telmarines. Your kings are in deadly fear of the sea, because they can never quite forget that in all the stories, Aslan comes from over the sea. They don't want to go near it, and they don't want anyone else to go near it. So they have let great woods grow up and to cut people off from the coast. But because they have quarreled with the trees, they are afraid of the woods. And because they are afraid of the woods, they imagine that they are full of ghosts. And the kings and great men, hating both the sea and the wood, partly believe these stories and partly encourage them. They feel safer if no one in Narnia dares to go down to the coast and look out to the sea, towards Aslan's land and the morning and the eastern end of the world. There was a deep silence between them for a few minutes. Then Dr. Cornelius said, "Come, we have been here long enough. It's time for us to go down to bed." "But must we?" said Caspian. "I'd like to go on talking about these things for hours and hours and hours." "Someone might begin to look for us if we did that," said Dr. Cornelius. Well, I'm going to stop there. And so we have learned who Dr. Cornelius is, that he's part dwarf, and we've also learned how the Telmarines came to power. And Dr. Cornelius tells Prince Caspian why he's giving him all this information about the old days and how the Telmarines destroyed most of the old Narnians. And he does this because he hopes Prince Caspian, and he believes Prince Caspian, when he grows up, will be a good king and can do justice for the people who have been mistreated. Well, that's it for today. Bye now.